Thank you guys so much for allowing us to hit 30,000 subscribers. That's been a goal of ours for a while. Let's get right into it. I'm just gonna go over what the big secret is for the power plant in this car, and then some of the interesting things that we're gonna be doing with this car. This will be the last overview before we really get into what we're fabricating, what we're building, and what we're installing on the car. So I know some of you guys are like, stop talking, start doing. It's been busy, so hang in there with us. This is gonna be a really interesting video regardless, so let's do a quick walk around of what we've already done. So the first thing that we were gonna do, which was super ambitious, was gonna be making a hybrid drift car, which would have had an electric motor making 300 foot-pounds of torque on the front of the 427. This was gonna be an NA engine with a 300 foot-pound of torque boost of electric power. Just going into all of the logistics of this project, we went over it for probably the last 6 to 8 months. It's just not something that's gonna fit us today. So we're actually changing. It is still gonna be different. We are gonna get away from the NA game, as awesome as it has been and as cool as it sounds. We're still gonna apply all of our fast revving, cool tricks of the trade, but to a forced induction engine. I wanna hear from you guys if you would wanna see a turbo or a supercharger. We pretty much have our mind made up on what we want to run, but we want to hear from you guys what would be the best in your opinion. You've got Hurst with the twin turbos in FD, you've got superchargers literally everywhere else, you've got the Pro Charger style where you can see those with Odie and Matt Field. What do you guys like the best? Sounds the best, works the best, looks the best. They all have upsides, downsides. Turbos have too much heat, superchargers blow their belts and can break the cranks off. You need a really solid crankshaft if you're going to run a blower. Lots of pros and cons. It's almost dead even. And even with NA and a bunch of nitrous, you got to deal with solenoids and nitrous, and using nitrous to add a ton of horsepower. Everything's got its downside. What actually is the best? I don't know if we know what the answer to that is yet, but you guys have an opinion, I'm sure. Looking in at the car, front end's going to be pretty much the same. We've got the BMW rack, we've got the dummy engine in place. One thing that we're going to be changing is we're just going to run stock style motor mounts. The reason for that is because the motor plate adds complications with the pulley setup. We didn't really have too many complications, but we want to keep everything as simple as possible because this is going to be the ultimate competition car. That's the goal. Everything is going to be simplified. Everything is going to be thought of. We thought of everything with the other Corvette, but now driving it in Drift Masters, we've realized pulling things and doing certain things could be done better. So the reason that I wanted to do motor plates was because it also ties in the frame rails and reinforces the frame rails. Instead, we're going to make some sort of an X brace up here that's going to tie in the frame rails and brace them separately. The engine is going to sit on its own in the subframe. Moving forward, we are not going to be running a stock steering column. We're going to be running a carbon fiber shaft steering column from my friends over in Russia. They're sending it over. We'll show you guys what that looks like, and you guys are really gonna like the quality of this steering column product. It's really sick. In the car, we've already changed quite a few things. We're making the transmission tunnel able to allow the transmission to slide back 10 inches. The reason for that is on the Corvette, we had to lean the engine back, drop the subframe down a bit just to get the transmission to slide out. So the goal here is to have this, which is going to just clip off. This slot is going to have the shifter here. The shifter is going to be able to go back 10 inches, and all of these additional cutouts in the transmission tunnel and this big pocket over here are what's going to allow that to happen within the Corvette. It's nothing worse than not being able to change something within like a 10-15 minute window. We want to be able to look at the clutch, pull the clutch, change the clutch in a 15-minute window. This is what we needed to be doing to do that. We've also replaced the floors from the fiberglass floors to these steel sheet metal floors. We just need to bead roll them and then weld them in. Integrally, it's not really going to make a difference, and then weight-wise, it's pretty similar. So there's not really an advantage to doing it other than it gets the seat slightly lower. It's a metal floor, so we're able to, weld things, drill things, cut things a lot easier. And we're also doing something interesting over on this side. In the passenger side wheel well, we're actually building a channel here that's going to come up about 2 inches. It's going to be 6 inches wide, and it's going to be a housing for all of the lines, brake lines, water lines, fuel lines from the front to the back. The reason we're doing that is we want to keep everything out of the tunnel, absolutely everything. We would really like to keep the exhaust out of the tunnel as well, and possibly run the exhaust over the frame rail, down the side, and have a 3-inch titanium pipe replacing this rocker, that is up in the air. We're not really sure if that's what we want to do, but that would be insane if we would be able to keep the exhaust completely out from under the car. This would be amazing for heat management, amazing for maintenance, checking on things, adjusting things, tightening things, and obviously pulling that transmission to either do a swap or change a clutch. So that's in question. We're not certain on that. Coming to the rear, you can see that we got the Bulldog sitting here. This is the FTF Race Shop Bulldog, capable of handling 1,500 horsepower. They've made the improvements from the original design that I asked for. They added the rear back. They used to have a bolt pattern here that had 2 bolts here and 4 bolts here. And I said for ground clearance, that should be adjusted to 3 and 3, which they did. They deepened the threads on these billet housings here, and they just made improvements everywhere. They plugged off the breather port here, which tended to leak oil. Everything that I mentioned to them, they did it within a couple months. So that is proof that this is a solid company to work with. You can buy this diff from us, through us, email us, whatever. This is the best diff that you can buy on the market. We're going to be doing something that's absolutely crazy, and you got footage of me talking about it with Kyle. Yeah. We're going to be making a rear trailing suspension system using a custom tubular subframe. Either way, man, it's going to be cool as hell. And hopefully it's just 2 nice strips that need to be like welded here, and then we weld in like a box that like gets welded there.
We're going to have to cut into the frame, no?
Shouldn't have to. This bolt hole will be quite close to the frame, but this one will just be a longer plate, nice and open. And then we'll have the easiest ever anti-squat adjustment, and I'll probably make a bearing welded to a plate that bolts the same way, so the toe will be the same. Oh, yeah. We're just gonna learn a lot, and if it can be used, amazing. You know what else I thought would be really cool? To house the trailing arm, if you press the bearing out of the Corvette knuckle and then you have the lower mount, you can actually make probably a tubular trailing arm that has a cup on the top and a cup on the bottom, and the 2 tubes come off of that, and it actually uses the Corvette knuckle as like the bearing, the brake hub. Because the Corvette knuckles are light, forged, and pretty strong. So you might as well use it. It's geometrically perfect for the bearing, the brakes, all of that is already done for you. We have 6 of them in the container, plus you can get them really easily, and it would look cool because then you would have a tube sticking in the top with like a machine dowel, a bolt, and a spacer to hold the upper, and then the lower is like basically our taper stud, and you bolt a tube to it. And then you have a nice, probably 1.25 inch or something, nice little merge, goes forward to the trailing arm, and looks sick. You just might as well just go crazy with it and have fun. Yeah, this may not be legal for certain series, but we're not even cheating, and it's not something that's unreasonable. We are going to be doing something that's very similar to the E46 rear suspension geometry, and there's a reason for that. When you look at a Corvette knuckle, you have 2 pivot points for the upper and lower control arm, and then you have a toe arm. This toe arm is located around 4 to 5 inches away from the pivot point. That means that any wheel contact is going to pivot off of a 4 to 5 inch fulcrum, and it's going to be a ton of force happening on the toe arm. You are almost always going to bend or break that toe arm with a good enough hit. On an E46, you have a 24 inch trailing arm, and then you have a 24 inch control arm. With that is a huge triangulation where when you hit something on the back of the wheel doesn't have that much leverage to bend or break anything, so generally you just break wheels. This is something where we've already been into deep enough to the wall twice, where the wheel has contacted the wall. It bends the toe arm, we fix it. It's not a problem really, but I would much rather have a faster fix because it breaks the wheel and it breaks the toe arm. I would rather just break the wheel. So with that said, there's also other advantages with the adjustability on anti-squat, the control of the camber and the toe and the roll center with the longer control arms, and I'm gonna learn a ton doing this. So stay tuned for that because we're gonna get cage kits to cut out these chromoly tubes and bend them up for us. We're gonna TIG weld them. I'm gonna get behind the gun again, which I'm really excited to do. and we're gonna make this thing look sick. And if it's something that we can't run, doesn't matter. I'm gonna learn a bunch that I can apply later to maybe a tube chassis of some kind at some point down the road. And then the tubular structure is gonna be sick. The diff won't have really anything under it. It'll just be like kind of floating there.
That'll be nice.
And it'll hold the front snout with a nice plate. You'll have a nice chromoly tube going like that.
Yeah.
And then you have another chromoly tube here. It actually just has two bends and it goes like this. And then two come over like that with down plates that bolt here. And then right behind those, you have the upper and lower control arm. The upper control arm will likely have to have a bend in it. So that'll probably be a chromoly tube with like a 20-degree kick in it to clear this frame rail. And then the lower will just be a straight aluminum bar with a jack screw. They'll both have a jack screw on the end. Moving on to the back, we have the same crash structure. We're gonna be mounting the same thing with the rad here. We're not sure if we're doing a fuel cell or the stock tank again. I do like the stock tank because it uses up this compartment that otherwise isn't used. And it's easy to fill with the stock fill cap. It's nice and low center of gravity. So we may continue to use that. It's likely where we're gonna go. Of course, we're still running the D&D carbon seats and a lot of the D&D products. It's been great for me for the last 2 years. Other than that, there's not a whole lot else to talk about other than to just start doing things. So that's the overview of what we're doing with the car and what's going to be different. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next Tip Tuesday video.